Federal government declares state of emergency on water supply, sanitation and hygiene in the country.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo woos foreign investors, says Nigeria on track in infrastructural development drive.
Investing in infrastructure in Nigeria, we've doubled power generation, we're investing in rail, we're investing in power.
Minister of Aviation rekindles hope on National Air Carrier project.
$300 million that will be requiring between June 2018 to 2022.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the National Action Plan on Water, Sanitation and Hygiene.
It is generally said that water is life and proper sanitation is dignity.
No doubt about that, Kirian, but if we go by the World Bank report, which indicates that some 2.4 billion people worldwide live without access to potable water, sanitation and basic hygiene services, then we can safely say that about a third of the world's population, of course, has been stripped of decent livelihood and dignity.
And you won't be wrong, Kingsley, as Nigeria has its share of water, sanitation and hygiene challenge, which has prompted President Muhammadu Buhari to officially declare a state of emergency on water supply, sanitation and hygiene in the country yesterday.
Indeed, Kirian, that declaration of a state of emergency followed the United Nations and WaterAid reports that over 60 million Nigerians lack access to potable water.
All right, and those reports, Kingsley, you will recall, also indicated that 120 million Nigerians do not have decent toilet facilities and 47 million people engage in open defecation.
Oh, well, Kirian, those stats are perhaps reflective of the ever-widening gap between the rich and the poor. And do not also forget that cases of waterborne diseases such as cholera and typhoid fever usually trail the lack of access to potable water and ultimately proper sanitation.
Yeah, and that's indeed right. And remember, too, that the trend of having internally displaced persons and IDP camps in many locations nationwide in recent years could have compounded Nigeria's water, sanitation and hygiene situation. Many of the IDP camps lack basic amenities and toilet facilities, leaving their occupants wallowing in poor hygienic conditions.
All right. Now, Kirian, you're very right. But, of course, thanks to the government's determination to restore dignity to Nigerians across the board with the launch of the National Action Plan on Water, Sanitation and Hygiene, otherwise known as WASH, and this was done by President Muhammadu Buhari, there's hope on the horizon.
Indeed, that action by Mr. President gives some bite and immediacy to his declaration of emergency on water supply and in the country. But what would be the nitty-gritty of the National Action Plan on Water, Sanitation and Hygiene in Nigeria? And what will be the role of the subnational governments towards achieving various targets in the action plan? How will the action plan be funded? How soon will more Nigerians have access to potable drinking water and proper sanitation?
Very pertinent questions you have posed there, Kirian, and of course we shall be seeking the answers from our guests as we take a look at the National Action Plan on Water, Sanitation and Hygiene on Good Morning Nigeria today. Indeed, Kirian, this is a subject that concerns all Nigerians, including those who already have access to potable water, because when you look at the supply chain as well as the consequences of lack of access to potable water, it affects virtually everybody.
Exactly, from bulk water supply to, of course, you know, that should be cascaded down to the states and local governments, you know, to ensure water supply. Remember that song put together by the late Felera Kuti, Water No Get Enemy.
Absolutely, it doesn't have an enemy, and then more particularly for potable water. Now, assuming you are, in the Nigerian sense, a big man, and then you, of course, maintain your proper hygiene, what happens to your domestic staff? What happens to your staff who are in the office? What happens to others with whom you deal on a daily basis? Do they have access to potable water? Do they have access to proper sanitation and therefore hygiene? what are the consequences? There are very few adult persons who haven't had cause to deal with one waterborne ailment or the other, such as particularly typhoid in the past couple of decades.
And all waterborne diseases are very dangerous.
Absolutely.
Very dangerous.
Absolutely. So it's on that note, we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's a live broadcast, and my name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian Umayo. Well, it's always good to have you join us on the program Good Morning Nigeria, and this is the last edition of the program for the week. And as always, we will serve you all the complimentary segments of the program, which of course include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But first, Ann Jibuno is ready to serve us the Good Morning News.
Yes, hello, Kieran and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. A state of emergency has been declared by the federal government on Nigeria's water supply, sanitation and hygiene sector. President Muhammadu Buhari made the declaration at the formal launch of the National Action Plan towards revitalizing the sector for improved standards of living in the country. For a start, the president said henceforth, federal government support to states will be based on their commitment to implement the plan, as well as end open defecation by the year 2025.
My singular honor to formally declare a state of emergency on Nigeria's water supply, sanitation and hygiene sector. I call on all state governments to complement this effort by according the sector similar recognition to enable us work together to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals targets for water supply, sanitation, and hygiene by 2030.
Meanwhile, Water Resources Minister Suleiman Adamu says the official declaration of a state of emergency in the water, sanitation and hygiene sector by President Muhammadu Buhari will stimulate the needed political commitment to wash issues at both federal and state levels.
The National Wash Action Plan has the primary objective of ensuring that everyone living in Nigeria has access to sustainable and safely managed wash services by 2030 in compliance with the Sustainable Development Goals for water, that's called 6.1, and sanitation.
With the state of emergency that has been declared today by Mr. President, we have received the highest political backing for the development of the sector.
Away from water issues now, President Muhammadu Buhari has emphasized the need for parliamentarians and nation-states in Africa to champion the cause of peace, security, democracy and socio-economic development on the continent. The president stated this at the opening of the 41st Conference of the African Parliamentary Union in Abuja.
In spite of this progress, we are not unmindful of the remaining challenges of armed invaders who ransack villages and small farming communities and commit terrible acts, including the cold-blooded murder of women and children. We are also making progress in addressing this challenge. It is my strong belief that the APU will develop strategies to assist governments in confronting this menace. I will be more than willing to fast-track your resolutions for deliberation and adoption at the ECOWAS sub-region and much larger African Union.
And Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says Nigeria is on the right track in its infrastructure development drive and will continue to encourage investors to partner the country. Now, the Vice President said this when he participated in a presidential investment chat at the opening of the African Investment Forum in Johannesburg, South Africa, aimed at unlocking Africa's potentials for the benefit of the people.
Investing in infrastructure in Nigeria, we've doubled power generation. We're investing in rail, we're investing in power. We're spending more money than ever before in the history of the country in capital, 2.7 trillion in 2 budget cycles. So we're on the right track.
And back in Nigeria, the visit of the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall may have come at a time when a lot seems to be happening in the country. However, the body language of the august visitors clearly demonstrates a nod for the Buhari administration.
Started collecting these chickens from the commercial hub of these women. So it's a possibility. These are things that people were taking for granted. Initially, women just have chickens and have them almost like household items. But right now, they understand the value of these chickens and they're very, very happy.
As a Commonwealth member now, I think these are the broader issues to demonstrate the interest, the genuine interest that the British government, through DFID, actually give and provide support to maybe the less advantaged people here in Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the Prince of Wales joined Nigerian armed forces chiefs and top government representatives to pay respect to British and Nigerian soldiers that fought and died during the First and Second World Wars and more recent conflicts in the northeastern parts of Nigeria at the military cemetery in Abuja. British Defense Advisor to Nigeria, Brigadier Charles Calder, hailed Nigeria's commitment to maintaining peace and fighting terrorism across the globe.
Partnership with Nigeria to address her own national security challenges, that we remember Nigeria's contribution and sacrifice in both world wars.
There are indications that the national air carrier, the Nigeria Air, will soon come on stream. Minister of State for Aviation, Hadi Sirika, stated this at the 5th Aviation Stakeholders Forum in Abuja, that once the program is completed, the project will take off.
The total $300 million that we'll be requiring between June 2018 to 2022, the $300 million, they will give it upfront. Let's talk. And in writing. So we do have investors. But is it the intent of government to allow people, not the Nigerian public, not the Nigerian entrepreneurs, to come and leverage on our level and take all the money and go away?
The presidency has expressed concern over recurring reports alleging that President Muhammadu Buhari has reneged on his earlier acceptance of the 30,000 naira recommended as the new national minimum wage by the Tripartite Committee. A statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, says these reports are contrary to what transpired on Tuesday, 6 November, when the committee presented its report to the President. The statement says the President acknowledged concerns raised by government on affordability and Labour's focus on meaningful increase, but never mentioned any figure. It also noted that what the President committed himself to was a new minimum wage, and only after the report of the committee has been reviewed by the executive and legislative process of government and an appropriate bill presented to him for assent. Well, that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Kirian after this break. Thanks for watching.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new, improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
You in the air-conditioned office with the itchy throat. Strepsils. Girl in the spotlight with the raspy throat. Strepsils. You in the pollution. Yes, you. Dry throat. Strepsils. Hello in the downpour with the scratchy throat. Take Strepsils. Strepsils, with its soothing medicinal ingredients, will heal the harm done to your throat from external factors. Strepsils! Strepsils! Strepsils, for a dry, itchy, raspy, scratchy throat.
Your favorite Maggi star now wears a new look. Its great taste and quality still remain the same. With Maggi, every woman is a star.
Maggi!
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual.
For the three.
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah.
You take that one. Take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
How they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, for business stories, we have at least two of them as headliners, with the federal government reiterating its determination towards the full implementation of the tomato sector policy. Plus, government of Nigeria, Japan, and UNIDO launch Youth Entrepreneurs HIP scheme in the Northeast. Let's get details of these stories from our correspondent, Comfort Amodu.
We start with trade. The federal government has reiterated its commitment towards the full implementation of the tomato sector policy in order to develop local businesses within the sector. Minister of State, Industry, Trade and Investment Aisha Abubakar gave the assurance in Abuja at an interactive meeting with critical stakeholders in the nation's tomatoes industry to review the status of implementation of the policy. The issues of high cost of transportation, inadequate power supply, high cost interest rate, as well as inability of the locally produced tomato paste to compete with foreign brands smuggled into the nation's market are some of the challenges being faced by local investors.
I want to know what it is in terms of production, in terms of processing, in terms of the kind of tomatoes that is going to be planted. So for us to expect when the harvest time comes, for us to be able to say, that we are on the right track.
In another development, Nigeria, in collaboration with Japan and UNIDO, has launched a project to promote youth entrepreneurship in northeastern Nigeria. This is one of the new projects implemented by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization in Nigeria, with the Japanese government funding support pegged at $800,000. The project, with the team promoting social stabilization through entrepreneurship development in northeastern Nigeria, ProSED for youths, aim to further improve senior secondary school education by providing students with technical trade knowledge, where students will learn how to start and manage their own micro and small-scale businesses. The focus is to promote youth-led entrepreneur development, and the program, which targets inclusion in the curriculum of all secondary schools in Nigeria, has Adamawa, Bauchi, and Gombe in the pilot phase.
UNIDO is a very important development partner for the Japanese government, and we are increasing our cooperation with the Nigerian government. And this project especially is very significant for the future self-sustainable development of this country. So I very much appreciate the cooperation of the UNIDO and the government of Nigeria.
There is no way we can promote the innovation, we can promote the technology development in the country if we cannot focus on the human capital development.
If all the youths are involved and they are empowered one way or the other with the requisite skills to be able to fend for themselves, employ themselves, and probably employ one or two more persons, along with them, it will go a long way in, tackling the challenges we are having.
We try as much as possible, we as the executing agencies, not to disappoint them, to put, to see that their resources are not wasted. We follow up, we monitor, and it's the sustenance that would encourage them also more to give support. And to equities markets, Nigerian Stock Exchange All Share Index erases previous day loss, inching up by 0.37% to close at 32,228.50 basis point, as against minus 0.14% depreciation recorded previously. And next is a graphic summary of closing figures for Thursday's trading. And that's business news. Thanks for watching. I'm Comfort Amudu.
All right, Comfort Amudu, thank you very much for the business package. Next for us is a review of the stories in some of today's newspapers.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebi, is here with us this morning. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kingsley.
Yeah, Bayo, good morning,
Nigeria.
Welcome to Good Morning, Nigeria. All right. Kirian, let's begin with you.
Yes, let's begin with the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun newspaper, just besides the nameplate of the Daily Sun, new minimum wage, 30,000 naira proposal must follow due process, says the presidency. With a rider, says Buhari never mentioned any figure. That's on page 7. And now the lead headline in the Sun newspaper, primary polls, reps probe INEC parties. With a rider, ad hoc panel to investigate alleged Electoral Act violations. And just below the photograph there, where of course we see the Minister of Water Resources and President Buhari on the launch of the water initiative. And below that, we have some stories there. Again, DJ bribery videos, contractor to testify before assembly panel, on page 9. Supreme Court stops Rivers APC chair from going abroad over murder charge. You can get that also on page 4 of the Daily Sun. Then Boko Haram's advancement halted, says Buhari. Terrorism Organized crimes have no borders, says Saraki. Details on page 3 of the Daily Sun.
All right, well, let's get to see the New Telegraph, which also has stories on matters arising from the proposed new national minimum wage. Presidency, that's the kicker. Buhari to review 30,000 naira proposal. NLC, you have no choice. And court orders federal government and Labour to submit report. Details of the story can be found on page 4 of the New Telegraph. And then if you also come to the Nigerian pilot, there's also a story there on controversy over Buhari's position on 30,000 naira minimum wage unnecessary. I take that again. Controversy over Buhari's position on 30,000 naira minimum wage unnecessary. And that's according to the presidency. Details of the story can be found on page 6. Bayo.
Yes, the running story, national minimum wage. The presidency has clarified that due process will be followed in reaching the implementation of the new minimum wage. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media, Mr. Femi Adesina, says that the President is committed to the new minimum wage only after a report of the committee has been reviewed by the executive and the legislative process, and an appropriate bill has been presented for his asset. And like you indicated in the other report, the National Industrial Court has ordered the federal government and the organized labor to submit the report of their negotiations to it. This is sequel to the suit that was filed on behalf of federal government by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. The parties to the suit are the federal government and organized labor. They are required to submit the negotiations of the new minimum wage on or before January 30th. The three defendants are NLC, TUC, and the Governors Forum. They were not represented in court, but the National Industrial Court of Nigeria restated its order of 2nd November, restraining organized labor from its planned strike. The parties are to approach the court on 30th of January 2019 and report whether or not they have settled amicably or will continue with the case.
But if I may ask, Bayo, yes, what is the relevance of the court now at this point when agreement has been reached to an extent, right? So is there any other importance there? Is it important for the court to come in again in between?
Well, there was a case filed at the court that, that Labour was threatening to go on strike on November 6th, but that was overtaken because there was a meeting and the report was submitted to the president. But from even the headlines we have read today shows that a decision has is being disputed because there's a position that is reported to be that of the presidency, and Labour is still threatening that there's no going back on the 30,000 minimum wage. Therefore, it appears that a resolution has, or an agreement with all the parties have not been reached, and the best way to resolve it is what the court is doing. Let's see the report of the negotiations and see whether an agreement is there binding in the negotiations. So when you are in dispute in the democracy, the best way to resolve it is to go to court.
Yeah, Bayo, thank you very much. I think that the issues that are being debated in the public space, those issues are clearly unnecessary. Assuming, there was proper guidance, for those persons whose expectations have been raised unnecessarily. The committee was to work on a proposal for a new national minimum wage. And yes, if you recall, we always said on Good Morning Nigeria that it is an act of the National Assembly that will finally give a new national minimum wage. And the National Assembly will not just wake up overnight and say, this is the new national minimum wage. The committee set up by the president will report to the president. The president will now, of course, there's also a draft bill that has been attached to the report of the committee, which the president, as chairman of the Federal Executive Council, will prepare a memo for the consideration of council. And then council will now say, all right, make its own, debate its own issues before forwarding a bill now to the National Assembly. I would say, is the National Assembly a rubber stamp?
No, but from...
That is the point.
Yeah, from what the Minister of Labour told us last week on this program, that is that agreement between the executive and the National Assembly on the possible ways of expediting action on that bill, so that it doesn't just stay there as long as other bills.
Obviously,
that has been agreed upon.
But the bill is not before the National Assembly
at the moment.
Yes. It has to go through the first, the second, and the third reading.
It is to correct the misapprehension that Mr. President said, oh, I've received this report and then I agree with everything you have said. When he hasn't even had the opportunity
to look at it.
Of course, his agents were members of the committee, but there were other members of the committee who were not his agents. That's why it was a tripartite committee. So look, what are the details that have been agreed to? What is it? What are the things that we need to touch on? What are the issues that might arise? And then there could also be backroom consultations, even after the submission of the report. Yes, we have the figure there, 30,000, but it is hard to actualize it into a law that is crucial.
The important thing is to make it faster. That's what
make it faster, but follow due process.
Due process is important. And from all indications, if the process is fastened and is concluded before January 30, then the process in the court might not be necessary. Exactly. However, if it is not...
That's why I asked that question of the court's position in the matter, which
if a matter has been
overtaken, by events based on the cancellation of the strike.
The rest has not been destroyed. The rest has not been destroyed. Now, the parties to the suit before the National Industrial Court have not also filed for a withdrawal of the suit. Yes. So the matter remains live before the National Industrial Court. The court cannot suo motu say that we are discontinuing the case.
But the prayer was to stop the election. So for me,
not election.
The strike. Now, why are they coming back when the event has been overtaken, as you pointed out? So my worry is that the court coming in between will delay the process, and that's what Labour is angry about.
No, delay which process?
No, the process of passing what has been agreed. Because if the court comes in, you have to obey the court, isn't it? So I'm only thinking
NLCs and TUC said that they had suspended the strike. You remember we were debating that and suspended.
Put in abeyance, not called off.
So if they reawaken it, what happens?
Well,
all right. No, let's take
the other story. The other story.
Let's take Nigerian situation. Where such things are handled, and some little a process that should be followed and fastened. Because of other laws and the regulations.
You must abide by the laws.
And then
that is the point.
It will not be effective again. So that's the
no. You must abide by the laws and processes. That's the simple point.
Okay, Bayo, go ahead.
All right. Now let me read these headlines from Nigerian Pilot.
Thank you.
Nigerian Pilot. Poor hygiene. That's the kicker. It says Buhari declares state of emergency on water sanitation. Regrets that 25% of Nigerians still practice open bowel movement. That's some repressing that. Now, decries prevalence of waterborne diseases and preventable deaths. Threatens to stop federal government support to states that fail to comply with WASH program. Details can be found on page 4. And also there on the front page of the Nigerian Pilot, NEMA kicks, rejects House report. And INEC announces November 17 for Cross River, Kwara, and Ekiti by-elections. That's on page 5 in greater detail.
Well, the President has declared that the situation of water supply, sanitation, and hygiene, particularly open defecation, is an embarrassment and has declared an emergency. In the process, a committee has been inaugurated. The National Action Plan, which is for short is called WASH, has been inaugurated. And the President has directed that all governments at all levels should work towards meeting the national water supply and sanitation needs. And specifically, federal government will also act with state government that show commitment to the National WASH plan. The intention is that by the year 2025, open defecation should have been forgotten in Nigeria. I think I should draw attention to this human interest story. 3 persons are confirmed dead in the boat mishap in Lagos, and this happened about 7:30. The Lagos State Waterways Authority says that the boat was conveying passengers between Coconut Jetty and Ojo, and the mishap was due to a collision with a wooden water supply service boat. Emergency services have rescued 12 persons, but 5 persons are still missing. You recall that the other day there was a boat mishap in Benue, and we lost several persons there. Before that, there was in Kebbi, and usually we have always advised that there should be life jackets. And in this instance, I think it was life jackets that helped about the 12 of the persons that were recovered. 5 persons are still missing. But the waterways have warned that they have advised the boat operators not to operate at night. And this accident happened about 7:30 in the evening.
All right, now let's go to the editorials, which of course were taken from the Guardian newspaper. Lessons from American midterm elections. Now, in the aftermath of the November 6 midterm elections in the United States of America, which placed the House of Representatives in the hands of the Democratic Party and left the Senate under Republican control, it is germane to examine the entire process and distill whatever lessons there are for our nascent democracy. Now, let me take one more paragraph here. At issue in the election was the very soul of American ideals. Should America keep its doors open to forces of liberalism, which the Republicans argue are contaminating the founding spirit of the nation? And on the other hand, does shutting the doors of America to the world not contradicting the very basis of the American nation? Bayo.
Yes, just briefly before I go to the editorial, I want to draw attention to what is happening in Zamfara. Zamfara State has created a situation of fulfilling its promises. Anybody who is able to apprehend a bandit and his rifle get 1 million. So when soldiers of Operation Sharendaji drove bandits from the Rumbu forest, a driver who was driving his Golf knocked down 2 bandits with their rifles and they died. The driver has gotten 2 million naira. Yeah. And so in another village, two villages have been given 1 million naira each. They were able to apprehend a bandit with their rifle. And so the commissioner in charge of Home Affairs and Culture says that if 100 bandits and rifles are seized, they are prepared to pay 100 million.
But this is a result of involving the locals, in the fight against bandits in Zamfara State. It is very, very important.
Yes, in fact, they have inaugurated a joint civilian task force who they are going to train because they now realize that they need the persons in the community who knows these bandits and can also help the security agencies and apprehend them.
I'm happy that the Zamfara state government is now responding to this. This was the subject of an article I wrote in 2001 at the end of a national security summit that took place at the International Conference Center here in Abuja. President Obasanjo then was head of state, and the conference was ahead of the 2003 elections. On account of the threats of insecurity to the elections and indeed all other issues. There were various proposals. And I came up with the idea, look, the title was Guns for Cash. In other words, you turn in a weapon and then you get paid some amount of money.
How far-sighted?
Unfortunately, that idea wasn't followed. But 17 years later, it's heartwarming that anybody can Google that and check it out.
Okay. Now the editorial, yes. Well, simply put, the midterm election of November 6 turned out to give the Democrats in the House of Representatives 223 seats to 197 to the Republican. However, in the Senate, the Republican maintained 51 seats to the Democrats 46. But the editorial is happening on the lessons Nigeria can learn from the midterm American elections. It says that the two parties did not try to impose candidates. Secondly, political campaign was on issues. And thirdly, early voting and early release of election result was a factor of that election. They also deployed technology that make the elections seamless and easy. And so they are admonishing that in our own democracy, nascent democracy as the editorial described it, we should imbibe that culture because the Democratic Party is now emboldened to exercise what is described as oversight. In our own case, we seem to have the hangover of a parliamentary system by saying that we are opposing. In a presidential system, what you have is multi-partisanship, and you use oversight to ensure that the ideals of your party and the nation is achieved.
All right, Bayo Toyobe, thank you very much. There are a number of very significant issues there in the American midterm elections. First time you're having Muslim women being elected to Congress. Yes. That is the lower house. And by the way, there was also a dead man who was voted for, and he was elected on the Republican ticket. But of course, he's going to be replaced by another Republican. Bayo Toyobe, thank you very much for being with us all through the week. We hope you enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, too.
See you next week. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with WASH. In other words, access to water supply, sanitation, and proper hygiene.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. Not be only to connect lights.
Come you and yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who would they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, what you talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from off.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Who am I? I'm a caregiver, a slayer,
Give them.
a boss lady, a foodie. I am the chief quality inspector and chief organizer. And when I'm cooking with my Maggie Star, I become a kitchen grand master.
Every day, you choose to make the difference. That's why you choose Maggie Star, made from natural soya beans and other carefully selected ingredients to help you cook the difference.
I am the chief enjoyment officer, and I'm the magnet that brings my family together. Need I say more? But best of all, I love what I do.
With Maggie, cook the difference.
All right, you're welcome back. And it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, for us to begin our conversation this morning, let's join our correspondent, Serafina Okon, with a backgrounder on the National Action Plan on Water, Sanitation and Hygiene.
It is my singular honor to formally declare a state of emergency on Nigeria's water supply, sanitation and hygiene sector.
The federal government declared an emergency on Nigeria's water supply, sanitation and hygiene sector at the inauguration of the National Action Plan for Revitalization of Water Supply, Sanitation and Hygiene. while directing governments at all levels to intensify efforts and work towards meeting the nation's water supply and sanitation needs. President Muhammadu Buhari warned that henceforth, federal government support to state governments would be based on their commitment to implementing the National Wash Action Plan in their respective states, all in a bid to end open defecation by 2025. The president, at the declaration of the action plan, noted that it has become critical to reduce the high prevalence of waterborne diseases in different parts of the country, which has caused preventable deaths. Statistics on open defecation, access to pipe-borne water services, and sanitation in the country are disturbing, as Nigeria now ranks number 2 in the global rating on open defecation, while India takes the lead. About 25% of the population are said to be practicing open defecation in Nigeria. What must Nigeria do to meet the SDG targets for water supply and sanitation by 2030? Should provision of potable water supply and sanitation be the sole responsibilities of the states and local governments? Is water supply and sanitation given the required attention, judging from the high prevalence of waterborne diseases that are being reported in different parts of the country? These are questions begging for answers from guests on the program. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you, Sarafino Kohn, for that report, raising several questions that will be tackled in the course of our conversation this morning. And joining us in the studio here in Abuja to discuss the National Action Plan on Water, Sanitation and Hygiene, otherwise known as WASH, is, of course, the man that will lead this squad, the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu. Thank you for finding time to join us this morning.
Good morning, Nigerians.
And also here in the studio, we have the Country Director, Water Aid Nigeria, Dr. Chichi Aniagolu Okoye. Dr. Chichi, it's a pleasure to have you here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We also have with us on the studios the water manager of the World Bank in Nigeria, Maria Sotomayor. Maria Sotomayor, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
And last but not the least, joining us for this conversation is Engineer Tunji Ariyomo. I hope I got that right now. Engineer Tunji Ariyomo is a special assistant to the Ondo State Governor on Public Utilities. Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Yeah. Same here, thanks.
Well,
all right, Kirian, let's begin the conversation straight away by getting the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu, to tell us some more about the components of the National Action Plan on WASH.
Well, the action plan came about because of statistics that were generated over time, which indicate that we as a country are not faring well in terms of water supply, sanitation, and hygiene delivery, despite all the efforts that have been going on. Of course, when you are making efforts, you need to measure. And probably that hasn't been happening before until very recently. And with the statistics coming out, there was a clear indication that we're actually doing basically like one step forward, two steps backwards progress. And therefore, there was a need to look at the whole concept, the whole way that issues of water supply and sanitation and hygiene are delivered in the country. And we went through a series of retreats and workshops and came up with the WASH action plan. And we looked at the whole, spectrum of WASH from the beginning to the end. Issues to deal with governance, financing, monitoring and evaluation, and getting the kind of partnership we require between the states and the federal government to act in a more serious manner than we used to, because I think we're just taking these things as a given.
or we've been thinking that the way we've been doing this, okay, that's all, everything is going on fine. But we really need to re-engineer the whole process. And that's what about the WASH action plan. And in that action plan, specific actions have been identified for the federal government to do, and for the states, specific responsibilities have also been assigned to the states. So it's for us to all come together to work. But the point is, federal government is always at the forefront in developing strategies and policies for the country. But we usually run into a problem trying to translate it to subnational level. We have 36 different governments, or 37 different governments, including the federal government. And sometimes our priorities just don't match up. And I think that is the crux of the matter. And that is why this WASH action plan is very important. And we got the right political backing at the highest level, with the president himself endorsed this program. And we hope that going forward, the state governments will take a more serious look at the issues of water, sanitation, and hygiene.
All right, Honorable Minister, I'll stay staying with you. We have had such master plans in the past in the water sector, perhaps not in this government. And we have also missed water as one of the components of Millennium Development Goals. Now we are talking about Sustainable Development Goals, and water has reappeared in Nigeria once again. So that shows that there has been failure in this sector. Now, you are talking about seminars or retreats or workshops, as the case may be. That really means that you have been talking to some stakeholders. Would like to know these stakeholders and what is the level of their involvement in this master plan? Because from all you have said, it does mean that government is more serious now with the political will that's been established yesterday. So who are these stakeholders and what are they bringing in?
Well, some of the stakeholders are here. We have our development partners who have been part of the process. The international community has subscribed to these SDGs, and they are helping various countries around the world to see to it that we meet the targets. But here at home, of course, the key stakeholders are we, the federal government, and the state governments, and the local governments. And as you know, I think at one time I've been here to discuss issues like PWASH, and I've said that the aim of PWASH is also to bring in even, the entire society, the corporate world, the people themselves who are they're basically the key drivers, because issues like open defecation, for instance, will require behavioral change, and nobody is going to do that for you. You have to change yourself. So everybody's a stakeholder in this business.
Once again, I would like you to speak to the components of the National Action Plan on WASH. What are the items that we are looking at different from what went on in the past?
There are not too many different items. I can tell you there are quite a number of things. I cannot remember all those things in my head. But I can tell you one of the most important things we want, for instance, as it relates to open defecation, is to see states legislating against open defecation. So we want to take a carrot and stick approach to it. I just mentioned behavioral change, but at the same time, we need to put some regulations. We need to, look at our building codes, for instance, and determine and say that, okay, there are rules and regulations governing location of public toilets and so on and so forth. So that's on the one side. But I think the key thing, the issue of funding. States need to invest more money. The federal government is willing to invest more money. And most importantly, we want to create a WASH fund so that funds are collected and used to improve issues of access, improve access to water supply and sanitation. These are some of the key highlights. And of course, we want to put mechanisms to be monitoring and measuring what we're doing, so that at any time and in space, we know exactly what we're doing in terms of progress. One of the issues that has been has made it difficult for us to achieve any progress is that we lack the statistics to even measure what is required. By that I mean you have a population and you're not investing money commensurate with the growth of the population. So you don't even know in a given city what's the number of people there. You are not updating your records, your statistics, to be able to know how many people really need the water, for instance, and by and what necessary projections you need to make so that you can align it to your investment in water and sanitation. These are some of the problems that we're facing, and we must address them.
All right, thank you. Let's go to the country director of Water Aid Nigeria, Dr. Chichi Aniagolo. You have listened to the Honorable Minister, and I'm also sure that you have studied some of the components of this plan now. Now, what did you deduce from that? Is that a good plan? If that is, how would it be achieved? Because from what we've said here, it has failed in the past, and this time around it's coming with a high political backing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think, first of all, we have to start by commending the federal government, especially the Honourable Minister, not just because he's sitting here, but because he has always shown that commitment and willingness, to address the issues. One of the first things we find as development partners is that many times government, is not willing to accept the situation. Most times it's argument as to whether the statistics is correct and whether this is what the real issue is. But in this instance, the government has accepted that there is a crisis in the situation and is owning up to it and is taking the lead. For us, this is really an extremely important aspect, because for development partners to be able to make any difference, they have to follow the key of the government. Ultimately, it is a government that we are here to support. It's a government that has a responsibility for making things happen. And so that demonstration of that political will is extremely important. Coming to the plan, I think the plan is very good. I think the plan, the PWASH, really looks at all the components. And again, the government is following that. Part of the recommendations of the PWASH is a state of emergency, which has been declared now and declared by Mr. President, which is excellent. I think what is really required now, just like the Honourable Minister said, is to get the states, to also key into the issue, because the honest truth is at the state level that people live. The federal government role is not the implementation of water and sanitation at the state level. It's not their role. Their role is creating the enabling environment, having the right policies, coordination, things like that. And I think that, the right steps are being made. Where we have the major challenge is at the state and local government level. And we are hoping that with the declaration of the state of emergency, that many states will come on board, that they will do the same, that they will declare states of emergency, that they will have the right policies in place, that they will have the right coordination. I know that funding is important, but funding is not the only thing. We need to get the sector working. We need to have, coordination, not just within the ministries of water resources, but with environment, with education, with health, all the critical ministries that make where water and sanitation is critical. We need to be able to already implement the policies that we have. The problem is that I totally agree with you. It's not just doing the paperwork, even though that's important. It's actually translating that to change. And we must recognize that water and sanitation is critical to achieving almost every SDG. A lot of the challenges we face in health, and a lot of the money we spend in the cure of health problems could be addressed if we had water and sanitation, diarrhea, Lassa fever, all sorts of diseases, many of them, as a result of water and sanitation. Education, a lot of girls are forced to not to go to school during their periods because they have nowhere, to there are no adequate sanitary conditions. And this is just completely unacceptable in the 21st century for a country as big as Nigeria. We can do it. I mean, it's really getting everybody on board. It's getting the media to constantly highlight this issue. It's getting development partners to key into this. And it's getting the Nigerian, just like the Honorable Minister said, you know, to understand that ultimately it is a change. It is a change in their lifestyle that's going to make this happen. And so everyone has to really understand that there is an emergency, you know, and the emergency is critical and that we all need to do something about it.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Chichi Aniagolu Okoye. I'd like to bring in now the water manager of the World Bank, Maria Sotomayor. In the late 80s and for most of the 90s, Nigeria experienced a dramatic relative improvement in water supply. There was a World Bank project funded in Lagos, for instance, which is Nigeria's mega city. And in most rural areas, particularly in some parts of the north, Water Aid and other partners were involved in the installation of hand-powered water pumps, and water supply was moving on. So the percentage seemed to have been growing. And then suddenly, with the launch of the MDGs, beginning with the new century, the figures just started, you know, coming down until right now we hit the rock bottom, as it were, that has precipitated the declaration of a state of emergency. Let's back up a bit, therefore, so that before we start making projections as to what the timelines will be or what the accomplishments will be for WASH that has just been declared, what went wrong that in the late 80s and for most of the 90s, Nigeria was rising with good water supply and therefore also a climb up, you know, in terms of hygiene and sanitation?
Well, thank you so much for having us. I believe that there was a lot of effort on the construction of systems, on the installing the infrastructure. However, there was not a commensurate effort on the operation and maintenance of those facilities. And so some of the statistics that we have show that systems that are being installed fail within the first year. And I think that's totally unacceptable in in anywhere in the world, but in a country like Nigeria, we need to empower the population. We need to make sure everybody is on board, as Chichi was saying, because these facilities were implemented with a lifespan of at least 10 years, and it's really unacceptable that within the first year there's a high percentage of failure. So as the Honorable Minister was saying, you do one step forward and two steps back. So one of the important issues of the plan is that it focused not only on the need for investing more, which, by the way, Nigeria invests 2% of its GDP on water, whereas the average of Africa, not comparing to countries of the same level of income, is 0.6% of GDP. So the efforts on investment that Nigeria is doing are not commensurate to even the African continent.
So did you say 0.6 or 6%?
No, 0.6% of GDP is the average that the African continent invests in water and sanitation. Nigeria, being the largest country in Africa, invests 0.2% of GDP.
I thought you said 2%. You said 2%.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Let's go to the Special Assistant to Ondo State Governor and Public Utilities, Tunji Ariyomo. Well, if I listened to Maria, she did mention the fact that at a point, we explicitly asked a question that had to do with the historical perspective of water and sanitation in Nigeria from the 80s downwards. And having been privileged to produce a documentary on water resources, which of course led me to about 5 states of the Federation, what was common is the fact that lack of maintenance, which Maria mentioned, of facilities. You could see the ones bought for some 40 years ago as still being operational, but not at a, perhaps a low percentage of operation by this equipment. And the states have always been blamed because, of course, in the long run, the federal government is in charge of a bulk water supply, while you are also in charge of water reticulation, ensuring that there is sanitation in your domain where we have greater number of people. Now, what was the problem? About towing from what the question Kingsley asked, give us a situation in Ondo State with respect to water and how you have been, collaborating with the federal government to effectively ensure water supply in your state.
Thank you very much. First, I want us to know, and I'm sure that's a fact, that the challenges with water in Nigeria mirrors the challenges with other sectors. So it's not just about water. There is something that is missing. And like I have stated at different fora, institutionalizing a culture of safe water provision as a mandatory right of the people is one way of getting into the needed psychological framework that can enable government at the state level, at the local government, and at the federal level to sustain that. It has to be a culture. It has to be what we know as a matter of fact, no debate, that our people must have as a basic minimum. The issue of maintenance is closely related to sustainability. And this is why I think we have to be very optimistic with the current national action plan on revitalization of the wash sector. Because this time around, it has had the participation, active participation of virtually all those who matter. States of the Federation were actively involved. We've been in Abuja several times with the minister to draft, to agree, to disagree, an active collaboration with local and international development partners before we finally came with this document that was pronounced effective yesterday by Mr. President. Now, this is very important. It gives or confers legitimacy now upon states to domesticate that, to become their own norm. In our state, for instance, through the leadership of the governor, we will be doing just that. And in the past 1 year, in anticipation of collaboration, we've also started to do a couple of things in strong collaboration with the federal government and the World Bank. One of which is currently ongoing at high-level procurement activities. And what we are trying to achieve, one, we have now developed the institutional framework to drive safe water in Ondo State. We have a guiding policy in place. We have passed our laws because there is no way you can commercialize water, for instance, for urban consumption without having the requisite laws in place. We now have that in place. Beyond this, we've also actively engaged with federal government. I'm sure without if you look at the state capital, for instance, the last time any water ran in the taps was when people like me were young, when we were like 10 years old. That stopped. But with this collaboration, we are now at a critical level. We've sent out what they call PMS. It's at the final stage. And we are also working hard with our cartography of that area. But beyond this, Ondo State has both urban water. We also have the rural water supply. In this year alone, what we have done as part of sustainability, which is the issue of maintenance, is to rehabilitate over 700 abandoned boreholes. They are now working. Our rural water agency is, if you move to Ondo now, that is basically what the agency is doing. And the agency is also shifting from just provision of single boreholes for a community, and then it becomes difficult to maintain so many boreholes. We are now trying to integrate this in such a way that we can have one major industrial borehole reticulated over distances that can serve clusters of community. That is the latest approach that we are deploying in our state as I speak. This is one way of ensuring that we are able to maintain what has been done before. I must say, that not just Ondo State, this is applicable to virtually all the states of the Federation. One of the major reasons why people or our people have not been maintaining facilities is because of the political quotient or the political implication. When you assume leadership as a leader, maybe at the state level, the first impulse or reaction is to have your own brand new programs. So if you got to know that you had functional or maybe some 600 boreholes that were not functioning, you don't want to touch them. You want to dig your own afresh. So you visit some communities, you see about 3, 4, 5 boreholes that are not working because successive government refused to actually rehabilitate and maintain the old ones. They keep on spending money on building new ones. So what we have done in the case of Ondo State is not to build new ones, but to go to the ones that were deployed, that were working some 30 years ago, rehabilitate them, ensure that they're not working, and relaunch them for the use of our people. And that is very effective. That's what our RUWASA is doing. Again, too, for our water corporation, Mr. Governor recently gave us an approval for us to match the investment of the WASH program in Ondo State, $2.3 million. I can say here openly, we are grateful to the Honorable Minister. There is a grant of $2.3 million for Ondo State, which is also addressing water needs. But Mr. Governor is matching that with equivalent of 702 million naira. And this is targeting 7 major urban water schemes in Ondo State that have been abandoned for the past 12 years, like the popular Awara Dam or Set Dam that is supposed to take water to Owo, as well as schemes in Okitipupa, this littoral part of Ondo State. That is where the paradox is very interesting. Even nationally, you look at Nigeria, virtually all our states are actually named after water. At least it's a reasonable number of our states are named after rivers. We have water in abundance. Ondo State is not different. But the irony is, even though we have water in abundance, nationally, for instance, we barely have 19% access to safe water. If we use the SDG standard, for instance.
Engineer Ariyomo, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. And I'm sure listeners will just be wondering whether we can have a replication of the good news that you are churning out from Ondo elsewhere in the Federation. And I'm asking this question against the background of what we have experienced in recent years, past 10, 15 or more years, particularly with the advent of the Fourth Republic, where political leaders are concerned about the so-called dividends of democracy with an excessive focus on the so-called infrastructure that has oftentimes excluded water and water supply. You keep hearing of infrastructure, building roads and roads. I'm just wondering, take any state capital where they have built roads and so on and so forth. Now, to achieve WASH and to, in fact, ramp up the percentage of water supply in the country, you will have to excavate all those roads that you have constructed, to lay the pipes in the first instance, and then be sure that the last mile is covered. How will the mindset be tweaked to reorient to the fact that, let's say, infrastructure incorporates water supply as a major component in the first instance, and to realize that dealing with last mile supply, water supply, is going to be a major issue that the political leaders will have to address?
Thank you very much, moderator. First, I must say that our engagement, state, federal, and the agencies must continue. In fact, we have now reached the most critical aspect of this revolution. By the declaration of a state of emergency yesterday, Mr. President set the tone. After our gathering yesterday, this is what happened. Ekiti state representatives approached me. They said they've heard a couple of information on what we are doing and that they would love to pay us a visit and to see how they can replicate this so that they don't start from nowhere. They can ride on what constitutes our success. And I immediately told them that, see, you guys, we heard you are working on Egbe Dam. Remember that Egbe Dam can feed part of Akoko in Ondo State. So we will be having that collaboration. However, there is a need for Honorable Minister, as a person playing at the center in this instance, to continue this to ensure that all states of the Federation, not as a matter of if they want to, we debated this during the preparation of the document, it must be a national mandatory necessity that they must do. That's why I love the tone of Mr. President. They must. If you don't, then we will continue to drag back. And there is no way. You can't be sure. If you are in Abuja today, your child could be in Enugu tomorrow or some other places. So it must become the new national standard. In fact, I'm envisaging a situation where the action plan is again reworked in such a way that we can have legislative backing. Yes. Such that states, local government, now necessity is upon everyone to key in. And if you have seen what other states are doing well, the national platform gives us opportunity to be able to cross-check and cross-fertilize ideas. You can now have learning curve advantage, so you don't have to start afresh. You see what that state is doing right, and then you want to copy what they are doing right, so you don't want to start from nowhere. So I believe strongly that Honorable Minister, as well as sector leaders at state level, have roles to play now to ensure that this, whatever other states have done well, we can take it to some other state, and that the momentum is sustained. I, for instance, going back to my state today, and it is my plan to quickly do a memo to council so that we can domesticate Mr. President's pronouncement. A state of emergency is not a small deal, it's a big deal. But it requires action for it to be effective. Otherwise, it becomes a clerical pronouncement. And we don't want this one to be a clerical pronouncement. We want to be able to match this. And the development partners are here. They know we need massive funding. I'm happy you've also mentioned that anyway, that we concentrate on roads. Yes, but again, water is life. Of course, too, I recognize the multi-sector implication of all this. What happens in one sector actually organically affects what happens in the water sector, vice versa. So, for instance, power. If you check most of the non-functional water schemes in Nigeria, we were debating this at some point, and I think we estimated that as high as 60-something% of non-functional water schemes are not functioning because of power. In essence, it isn't the pumps that are faulty. Nothing is wrong with the high-lift pump, but basically because of power. In essence, if we get power right, it will have cascading impact or effect on the water sector.
But that then shouldn't become an excuse, Kirian, for not that, because the rural water schemes were using solar energy to get them powered in some parts of the north. And then there were also hand pumps. I'm not saying you should have hand pumps in the cities. Now, generators are virtually commonplace. High caliber generators are also commonplace. But the points that you have articulated are noted. And by the way, I'm sure that you're going to leave us presently. WASH has come out this time. Now, during the military regime in 1974, thereabout, when Samuel Ogbemudia was the military governor of the then Midwestern state, his government had taken a decision that by 1975, somewhere to the end of 1975, there will be no pit latrines in Benin City. And for you not to have pit latrines in Benin City, you must have adequate water supply. There was good reticulation at that time, but unfortunately the government was overthrown in July of 1975.
This is taking us back in the days. Thank you very much. At this point, actually, Tunji Light Ariomo, we want to thank you, for being here this morning. And I believe, quite frankly, that many state governments would like to have you as a special advisor on water, because from your articulation...
public utilities.
And presentation, of course, water is a major part of public utilities. Thank you very much for being a part of Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you. We hope you don't miss your flight. All right. Okay, thanks. Now, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Well, next for us now is to take you on a very special package on sports. We'll be back very shortly.
United States Open champion Naomi Osaka.
Nigeria looking much more